Ancient Rome, a powerful empire that spanned centuries, is often remembered for its grandeur, its military conquests, and its influence on Western civilization. However, one of the most chilling aspects of Roman society was its system of justice, particularly the brutal punishments meted out to those who defied the law. Reserved for slaves, rebels, and criminals, it was a slow, agonizing death. The victim would be nailed or tied to a wooden cross, left to die from exhaustion, dehydration, and the excruciating pain of their wounds. It was a punishment designed not only to end a life, but to serve as a public spectacle. The Roman authorities knew that a brutal execution could deter any thought of rebellion or disobedience among the masses. In this case, the guilty party was sewn into a sack with a rooster, a dog, a snake, and a monkey, and then thrown into the river. If a public official was found guilty of stealing state funds, they could face being beaten to death or being executed publicly as a means to show the Roman populace that corruption would not be tolerated. These punishments served as a constant reminder that those in power, as well as ordinary citizens, had to adhere to the strictest moral codes. The act of killing one's father was considered so repulsive and unnatural that the punishment was designed to be as horrific as the crime itself, ensuring that no one would dare to commit such an offense. Those convicted of treason were often executed in front of large crowds, either through beheading or crucifixion. In a ceremony that involved cruel irony, the condemned person was sewn into a leather sack, often with an assortment of animals such as a snake, a rooster, a dog, and a monkey, and then cast into the sea. Prisoners of war, slaves, and criminals were forced to fight to the death in the arenas, often for the entertainment of the public. If someone was found guilty of treason or committing a grave offense against the state, their name and legacy could be erased from history itself. Practicing sorcery or casting spells was considered a direct threat to the state and the established order. A woman caught in adultery could be banished, enslaved, or even executed. However, the punishment was not always equally applied to men. The disparity in punishment highlighted the patriarchal nature of Roman society, where women were often seen as property. Banishing someone to a remote island or distant province was a means of keeping them alive, while stripping them of their status, wealth, and connections. Slaves were considered property, and their punishment often involved physical torment and exploitation. The legal system, while often effective in maintaining order, left a trail of fear, suffering, and violence in its wake. To challenge the law was to challenge the state itself, and the consequences were often fatal. While the Roman Empire may have fallen, the memories of these brutal punishments have lived on, offering a stark reminder of a time when the rule of law was enforced with extreme force and public humiliation. While the gladiatorial games and public executions have captured the popular imagination, the true story of Roman justice is one of cold, calculated brutality, where the punishment often matched the perceived crime in ways that would be considered unimaginable by today's standards. Slaves who rebelled or disobeyed their masters faced a variety of brutal punishments, including flogging, branding, or even crucifixion. The story of Spartacus, the famous gladiator who led a slave revolt, underscores the harsh treatment slaves received and the extreme measures taken by the Romans to quell dissent. While modern legal systems have evolved to be more humane, the legacy of ancient Roman punishments still resonates today, reminding us of the importance of balancing justice with compassion. Exile was an effective way to rid society of individuals who were seen as a threat without needing to resort to execution. Many political figures, especially during the turbulent periods of the Roman Empire, found themselves exiled rather than executed as a way of removing them from the political arena. A husband had the legal right to kill his wife if she was caught in the act of adultery, a legal privilege that was not available to women. Those accused of magic could face execution, banishment, or torture. Instead of outright execution, offenders would be marked permanently as criminals, often with an inscription that could reveal their offense to anyone who saw them. Thieves and fugitives would be branded on their forehead or hand, leaving a permanent scar that signified their crime. This public branding was a way to ensure that no one could escape the consequences of their actions, as the criminal's status as a transgressor would always be visible. In many cases, the accused were executed in the public square, where their deaths served as both punishment and a demonstration of Roman law's ability to protect against the unknown forces of the world. Statues would be destroyed, inscriptions would be removed, and any mention of the person's name would be erased from public records. This was perhaps the most insidious form of punishment. Death was permanent, but erasing a person's memory and legacy meant they were condemned to be forgotten forever. Gladiators could rise from their status as slaves or condemned criminals to achieve fame, but their victories were short-lived, and their lives were constantly at risk. These brutal spectacles were designed to remind the people of Rome as power and dominance over life and death. The Romans considered this act of killing one's father as the utmost violation of natural order, and they demanded a punishment that was equally unnatural and terrifying. This gruesome execution served as both a horrific punishment and a powerful warning against defying the most sacred bond in Roman society. While some slaves were granted manumission, those who ran away or disobeyed their masters could face brutal consequences. Punishments were not just a way to exact retribution, but a display of absolute power that the ruling classes wielded over both the citizens and slaves of the empire. These punishments have been etched into history, leaving a legacy of terror and discipline that shaped Roman society. A runaway slave could be marked with a branding iron, signaling their status as a fugitive. Others could face flogging, mutilation, or even death. The mere accusation of treason could lead to swift and deadly repercussions. And even the slightest hint of disloyalty to the emperor was considered a grave threat to the stability of the empire. These punishments were not just a means of justice, they were tools of terror, used to instill fear and maintain control over the empire's vast population. Those convicted of serious crimes were thrown into the arena, where they were torn apart by wild animals like lions, tigers, and bears. The spectacle was gruesome, but it served dual purposes. It punished the offender and distracted the public, turning the arena into a place of both justice and spectacle. One of the most infamous forms of punishment was crucifixion. In addition to crucifixion, damnatio ad bestias was a public form of punishment, often used as entertainment for the masses. Another severe punishment was decimation, which was used within the Roman military. If a legion was found guilty of cowardice or disobedience, 1 in every 10 soldiers was chosen by lot and executed by their comrades. This form of collective punishment was intended to instill discipline and fear within the ranks, ensuring that soldiers would always follow orders without hesitation. The brutality of decimation was unmatched, as it forced soldiers to live with the constant threat of death looming over them. While the punishments were harsh, they were often carried out with a sense of ceremony. The Romans believed that justice was not only about enforcing the law, but also about demonstrating power and control. Public executions, such as beheadings, were seen as rituals. Once in the sight of a criminal being executed in front of a crowd served as a reminder of the consequences of defying Roman authority. The penalty for parricide, the act of killing one's father, was one of the most horrifying. Even the act of embezzlement, or stealing from the state, could lead to brutal consequences. Treason against the emperor, the highest crime in Roman society, was met with the most severe punishments. To maintain their dominance, the Romans also enacted severe punishments for slaves, who were considered property rather than citizens, designed to instill fear and maintain order at all costs. One of the most infamous punishments in Roman history was poena, the punishment for parricide, which involved a public execution that shocked both the accused and the onlookers. The Roman gladiatorial games, though often romanticized in popular culture, were another brutal form of punishment and public spectacle. The punishment of damnatio memoria, which literally translates to condemnation of memory, was another form of Roman punishment that went beyond physical execution. Roman authorities also imposed severe penalties for those guilty of magic and witchcraft. For those who committed adultery, Roman society had harsh repercussions, particularly for women. The practice of branding criminals was another common form of punishment. While executions were frequent, the punishment of exile was often used for those who were not considered a threat to the public, but still needed to be removed from Roman society. The punishment of slavery was also central to Roman society. Punishments in ancient Rome were designed to demonstrate the empire's unchallenged authority. The idea of Roman justice was rooted in the belief that society could only be kept in order through fear, and punishment served as both deterrence and spectacle. Roman justice, in all its brutal forms, serves as a historical lesson on the extremes to which a society can go to maintain control and power.